Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to the session on framework driven pre thinking by GMATWhiz. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on wherever you are. So, I hope all of y'all can hear me. Can you hear me? If you can hear me loud and clear, just give a yes on the chat so that I would know you all are there. And while I introduce myself to you guys, I would love to hear all about you, where you are from and what are you doing currently, whether you have already taken the GMAT or you would be taking it in the near future and when. So let me get started with my introduction, and then I would love to, in the meantime, I would also love you guys to put forward your introductions. So, my name is Sunita, and I will be your host for the session. I have been with the with the GMATWhiz since its inception, and I have been instrumental in making the course. Teaching is my passion. I have now, for the last decade or so, I have coached nearly more than 20,000 students for various entrance exams. And this is something that is really, really very close to heart. I love doing it. So today, let's see, we are going to really have fun. And in the meantime, let's see who have joined us. So I have got Vivek. Hello, Vivek. How are you? And what are you doing, Vivek, now? Currently, what are you doing? And where are you from? Okay, and let's hear what the others have to say. Hi, Chirag. So Chirag is targeting for 710. All the best to you, Chirag. Really hope the session helps you in achieving your goal. Where are you from, Chirag? Hi, Aishwarya. Nice to see you guys. So, all right. And then I have, okay, so Shade, he's from Israel and he's targeting for 700. Wonderful. Welcome. So we've got people from far and wide with us today. All right. So today's session is primarily driven, towards one goal, and that is pre-thinking. All right. I'm sure this is something that all of us have heard every now and then, and all of you who have been preparing for GMAT have definitely heard of pre-thinking. Hi, Akshit. Hi, Ibrahim. Um, Welcome to the session. So let me get started, guys. All right. That was so when we talk about pre-thinking, like people have various kinds of thoughts about what is pre-thinking. And usually it is that they believe that pre-thinking is like predicting the answer choice. All right. And that couldn't be more wrong. Okay. It's a very distorted understanding of pre-thinking, not really what pre-thinking is. All right. And a lot of students, therefore, really go wrong on pre-thinking because they don't really have an idea of what is pre-thinking and what is needed to get this step right. So today we are going to talk in detail about this, guys. Let me see who all have joined. Hi, Gautam. Um, Tell me, guys. I mean, what according to you, or when should you pre-think, or how does one pre-think, or when should one start pre-thinking? What are your thoughts on this? Usually people believe that pre-thinking is a step which follows after you have read the stimulus. Okay, I've read the stimulus now, and now I should start pre-thinking. That's not quite how it works, and I'm going to talk to you about how it really works. So just hold on to your horses till then, if I may say so. So I have got Gautam from Portland, Ibrahim from Nigeria, I've got Chirag, who is working from India, Agra. I've got Akshit, and Akshit says CR is his favorite topic, but he finds it challenging. So Akshit, I really hope after today's session, CR will be challenging, but in a very, very good way. Shirde is from Israel. We've got Aishwarya, Chirag, and Vivek. So all of you, a very, very warm welcome. Let me get started. If you have any questions that you want to ask, just hold on for a bit. I'll definitely keep giving some spaces for you to ask questions. So let me get started with this. So as I was saying, the idea that pre-thinking is all about predicting what is going to be the answer is the wrong idea. So what is this pre-thinking? All right. So pre-thinking is actually, if you can understand, coming up with a shadow answer. Shadow answer means you don't have a very clear cut, exact word for word answer that is ready with you. It's a kind of shadow answer before you even look at the answer choice. All right. And this pre-thinking step really starts while you are going through the stimulus itself. Now, this is very important. Pre-thinking is not something that suddenly comes up in your mind magically after you have finished reading the stimulus. It is usually something that starts while you're reading, while you're analyzing the stimulus. Okay, what happens is a certain idea forms in your mind when you notice the logical gaps in the stimulus, and then you build on that. Then you come up with possible scenarios that can fill that gap. That is pre-thinking. All right. So the next question is that if that is pre-thinking, that pre-thinking starts during the stimulus itself, then why do students falter? A lot of us make mistakes on pre-thinking. I'm sure you guys have faced this scenario where you came up with some sort of a pre-thought answer, but it did not match with the given stuff out there, or you pre-thought something, but that was totally incorrect. All right. So, why do students falter at pre thinking? Now, this is the explanation which will really surprise you. Why are you unable to pre think or unable to spot the logical gaps when you're reading the stimulus? Well, it's very simple, because you do not have a clear understanding of the stimulus and the conclusion. That is why you falter. You're not able to derive, because you're not able to understand the stimulus, you're not able to understand the gaps that are there in the stimulus. And then the next question that arises is, well, why is it that we are not clearly able to understand the stimulus? Okay, that is because you gloss over the passage. Now, I can sympathize with this, as in I can definitely understand your anxiety over time, but trust me, sometimes you actually land up spending more time just because you're anxious about time. Okay, we'll keep talking about that throughout the session today, but primarily you're not able to pre-think because you're not able to understand the stimulus, and you're not able to understand the stimulus because you don't read the stimulus carefully, guys. You usually just go through the passage quickly, and you tell yourself probably, well, I have understood some part and I'm confused about the other parts, but okay, I'll come back to it. I'll come back to this passage for clarity when I'm going through the answer choices. You tell yourself this and you move on. But what happens is, because of the time pressure, because of the stress, when you really see the answer choices, you're confused. You're confused. Why? Okay, because you have not read you've not understood the stimulus properly. So this is where the problem starts and builds up and culminates in a lot of these. These are the fallouts of not properly analyzing the stimulus, guys. What happens is you're not able to identify the conclusion correctly. Often there is a confusion about what really is the conclusion, and therefore you are unable to identify the scope of the conclusion. Now, what is the scope of the conclusion? We'll talk about this, all right? But for now, I'm sure you have heard that this is an out of scope choice. So when we say out of scope choice, what does it mean? It means that it does not fall within the scope of the conclusion. And why it does not fall within the scope of the conclusion is because you were not able to identify the conclusion correctly. All right. So the final result of you not understanding the stimulus correctly is this. And correct me if I'm wrong, and try to see if this has happened with you. You go back and forth between the stimulus and the answer choice. Once you look at the stimulus, then you go back to the answer choice and again to the stimulus. You waste precious time, the very time that you were trying to save. You were reading the stimulus quickly, you waste that time. All right. And often you choose out of scope answers because you really weren't clear about your stimulus and your conclusion. You mark the incorrect choice often, which is strategically placed just before the correct answer choice. All right. So this confusion really breaks down your confidence, and you not only do badly on the CR, you also kind of do badly on your SC and RC questions. and that affects your overall score, guys. So you can see this ripple effect, which starts with you not really analyzing the stimulus properly. And I'm sure a lot of you have never given it much thought. Probably you just keep thinking that, oh, I cannot pre-think, I cannot pre-think. But actually, pre-thinking is not really the problem. At least it is not the core problem. The core problem is totally something else. When you reach the answer choice and you're not able to pick the correct answer choice for the right reasons, you think you're making a mistake with the answer choice, but that's not the case. You already made the mistake when you did not understand the stimulus and you still went ahead um, with it. All right. So here's what we're going to do in today's session, guys. I'm going to discuss and demonstrate how to read the stimulus correctly. Now, this is very, very important before we even talk about pre-thinking. Okay, it's very important to read the stimulus correctly in order to draw the proper analysis of the stimulus. Then we will talk about how to precisely identify the conclusion, how to identify the logical gaps, and how to set the scope of the argument so that even if you cannot pre-think, you can come up with the correct answer choice. So today I'm going to show you what to do when you cannot pre-think. I'm also going to discuss with you something very, very novel, which only GMATWhiz has brought to the platform, and that is frameworks for pre-thinking. Yes, you heard me right. We have developed frameworks which can help you pre-think in the right direction. So more on that later. But before that, a very, very important announcement, guys. So the important announcement is about our Black Friday sale, which is on right now. Okay, a flat 60% off on all our online prep courses. All right, and you can avail it from today onwards. That is the entire course you will be getting at $199 instead of $499. Individually, if you just want the verbal course or the quant course, it is also available at a flat 60% discount, and which amounts to $99 individually. So that's the Black Friday sale, and this is the best sale available right now. So I do hope those of you who are looking to avail of a course which is world class and yet at a very, very affordable price, this is it. So Piyush is our co-host today. He is one of the co-founders of GMATWhiz, and he will be sharing the link to this sale that you can avail of. The link to it was provided to you in the chat boxes, so I hope you can get that. So with that, let me also kind of quickly, introduce ourselves to you. So GMATWhiz is, and I can say this with like super confidence, that GMATWhiz is the world's only and truly personalized course. We offer you AI assisted platform. And the good part is we have a really great combination of AI driven course and let me call it human intervention. We have dedicated mentors who will monitor your progress. We will have a totally AI driven study plan for you, which will adapt in real time improvement. Courses will be, the courses in real time improvement, and you can really, really, really make a lot of head on with this kind of course. What makes and the evidence that this is one of the most effective courses around is, you can see this. If this is a GMAT Club verified reviews, average score improvement is the highest for a GMATWhiz student. So that's the latest data on score improvement. As you can see, ours is way beyond even our closest competitors. All right, so that is as it is. And once again, therefore, before I delve back into the our discussion, our primary discussion today, the Black Friday sale, guys. So avail of it over the weekend, and very, very happy learning to all of you. So let me proceed further from there. Now, how to analyze the stimulus? I promised that I would show you this, and this is something. It's a core skill, guys. Okay, so how do we do this? Now we do this by identifying the various components correctly. All right. What do I mean by the various components? I'm talking about understanding the role played by each component, every sentence in the stimulus. What is the role that it is playing? And if you understand this, you can really, really solve the question with ease. So we already know, some of us who have already prepared for CR in some way or the other, that these are some of the common kinds of structures that you would find on a CR argument. You will be given premise and the conclusion, more than one premise, sometimes a counter premise and a premise as well, sometimes a premise and an intermediate conclusion before the main conclusion, or even all of it, the premise, the counter premise, the intermediate conclusion, and the conclusion. All right, so these are some of the possible structures of an argument, and there are variations. Each of these components can be placed anywhere in the argument. Like, it's not necessary that the conclusion always comes at the end. It is not necessary that the premise always comes at the beginning, and so on and so forth. So here's what we're going to do. Here's a very simple example. This is no way to test your CR skills right away. This is to kind of help you how to analyze the stimulus correctly. So here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to read this short paragraph and identify the various components, like identify which portion is the premise, which portion is the conclusion, which portion is the intermediate conclusion. So in the chat boxes, you can give me your answers in this form. For a premise, you can write a P. For a conclusion, you can write a C. For the intermediate conclusion, you can write an IC. For a counter premise, you can write this. All right. So I want you to identify which portion of the paragraph is what, in that order. Say, for example, if you believe the first segment is a premise, you write a P, then you put a comma. And then if you believe the second segment is a conclusion, you put a C, if you believe that's the main conclusion. All right. So I'm going to give you just a minute to do that. In the meanwhile, I'm going to mute myself. So guys, go ahead. Hello, Arian. Hello. Okay. So you have a minute, guys, and I am going to just mute myself in the meantime. So go ahead. Hi, Ashwin. Good evening. Hello, Arpit. So, Arpit, you have to put in the markers, I mean, for all in the same line. Like, you can just write P, comma, C, comma, IC, comma, or you can put a slash. Hi, Gangadhar. So, let me see. I'm beginning to get some of the answers. So, Arpit, I want you to give me the whole thing, all right? Just not just C for which segment. So Gangadhar, okay. So first one, all right, okay. Harsh, Gautam, Gagan. Um, just a small suggestion. So it is possible that in a single sentence, you have a portion which is the premise and another portion which is perhaps a conclusion or something. So you can divide the same sentence into two different kinds as well. All right. It's not necessary that one full sentence will always be only one thing. So I've got answers from Gerald. Hello, Gerald. All right. So most of you are saying that the first segment is a premise, then we have a counter premise, then we have a premise, and then we have a conclusion again. Okay. All right. So then I have also got options where premise, and then we have another premise, and then a conclusion. Okay. I'm going to wait a bit more for more answers because I can see a lot more of you are there. And then I'm going to really show you how to read this. All right. Akshit also believes that we have a premise, counter premise, and then we have a conclusion. Okay. So how many of y'all really do this when you're actually solving the question? How many of y'all honestly, you really go out and pick and say, okay, this is a premise and this is the counter premise and this is the conclusion. All right. So I have Shirde from Israel saying that the first one is a premise, second one is a premise, and then we have the conclusion, and then we have the counter premise. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Ibrahim. So, Ibrahim, I don't know why you can. I just have the example on the screen, Ibrahim, as of now. I have not put anything on. Hello, Muhammad. So, most of you seem to have got at least part of it correct, but I'm going to show you how all of you are making a small mistake, all right, or kind of you're not really seeing one small aspect. So, just hold on to your questions while I kind of show you how to do this thing. Okay, guys, so here goes. This is how we teach you how to read at GMATWhiz, how to read anything, whether it is a sentence correction question or it is a CR question or it is an RC question. All right, so here goes. The new technologies for the manufacture of paper. Okay, so we're probably going to talk about some kind of new technologies that are being used for making paper. Okay, so these new technologies require significantly less fuel and water. Now, this here is a premise very clearly. It's a fact that the author is presenting. All right, and he's presenting to probably discuss something about this paper manufacture or maybe the new technology. So the first sentence is definitely a premise, and almost all of you got that right. On the other hand, now if we look at this portion, on the other hand, this is what we call a premise marker. Okay, the new technologies require a lot of labor. So this is another piece of information, another fact. All right, but definitely it is not saying the same thing as what the first sentence is saying. Now, for the moment, I have marked it as a premise because I don't really know which of these two premises is going to support the conclusion. Okay, it is possible that the first one is a counter premise and the second one is the premise. It is possible that the second one is a counter premise and the first one is a premise. So as of now, for me, both are premises, and I'll see later on which one of these is a counter premise, because definitely one of them is a counter premise. There is a contrast between the two. One hand, we're talking about an advantage of the new technologies of manufacturing paper. On the other hand, we're talking about a disadvantage. It requires a lot of labor. The next segment, and this could therefore, now therefore here is a conclusion marker. So this portion of this sentence is actually a conclusion, and we don't really know whether this is the intermediate conclusion or this is the main conclusion, but we do have a conclusion here. And therefore, so on the other hand, the new technologies take up a lot of labor and could therefore offset, that is kind of take away all the advantages of the reduction in fuel and water costs. All right, so here this is a counter premise because we are using on the other hand. So far we are going to take this as a counter premise and the first as a premise. It could change later on. And definitely the segment with therefore is an intermediate conclusion so far because we haven't finished reading the passage as of now. However, now clearly however is a contrast marker. However could mark off a premise as well as a conclusion. It is totally context dependent. On the other hand, there is also a since, which is definitely a premise trigger. Okay, so here we have premise 3. Since labor is cheap compared to the cost of water and fuel, okay, so because so a cause is being given for something, the overall costs of paper manufacture will likely reduce significantly. Now, this is the main conclusion. All right, how do we know this is the main conclusion and the other one is the intermediate conclusion? Well, okay, we know very clearly that the motive of the author in this passage is to tell us about the disadvantages of the new technologies and the advantages, and finally tell us that it is more advantageous, okay, to manufacture paper. It will reduce the overall cost of paper, these new technologies. So what we have here, therefore, clearly is the first one is a premise, the first segment. Then you have a counter premise. Then you have an intermediate conclusion. And then you have the conclusion. And then you again, then you have a premise. And then you have the conclusion. Okay. So those were the various segments. And all of you mostly kind of got that those 4 components. Most of you got the first, second, fourth, and fifth components but totally missed out on the intermediate conclusion. And often that could be something that caused you the, to throw away the question. So overall, what we have is premise 1 and premise 3. Okay, premise 1 and premise 3, they basically support the conclusion. All right. Okay. Whereas premise 2, okay, that is premise 2 counters the conclusion, this one. So we call it the counter premise. Premise 2 supports the intermediate conclusion. Therefore, in a way, it is a premise for the intermediate conclusion. All right. Okay. But the intermediate conclusion also acts as a counter premise for the conclusion. So that is the complete relationship. I hope all of you were able to follow this, guys. So I have Somak, who's given premise, counter premise, intermediate conclusion, premise, and conclusion. Wonderful, Somak. That was really so far the best one. Ibrahim, I hope you can see what is going on. The display is clear for you. So, guys, I hope this makes it very clear to all of you how to read a stimulus. And I have used a very simple stimulus, but the same effort is to be put into reading even a more difficult stimulus. All right. Okay. So, what I'm going to bring up now is a question for you guys to solve, where I'm going to show you that even if you cannot pre-think, I'm sure a lot of you often wonder that I can't pre-think. What am I supposed to do? Can I never solve a question? No, fear not. If you cannot pre-think, you can still correctly answer the most difficult questions by correctly analyzing the scope of the argument or conclusion. I'm going to show you that. All right. So let me bring up the question for you. And currently, right now, I want you to solve it the way you want, the way you normally solve it, so that we can see how the method that we're going to show you today really makes a difference in your solving. All right. So let me bring up the question for you guys. Just give me a moment. Here is the question for you. I'm going to mute myself. All right. And you will have 2 minutes to answer this. And once you have the answer ready, you can start putting it in the chat boxes. So here goes. Please start solving. I'm going to time you. So, Manidhar, you're asking question, does intermediate conclusion act as a counter premise for the main conclusion? Yes, Manidhar, absolutely. It does. Ibrahim, if you're having problems seeing what's on the screen, I think you'll have to try to log in again, try to rejoin. There's another thing I want you guys to do, apart from put in your answers. I also want you guys to provide me provide me with what is the conclusion of this argument. Like in your own words, can you just type in what you believe is the conclusion, the main conclusion of this argument in your words, mind it. So I have answers from Arpit, I have answers from Gangadhar, Shomak, Shirde. Uh, so Akshit, if you have solved this question, not a problem, because I'm going to show you a method. So the issue is not whether you're familiar with the question or not. The issue is what is your takeaway from the question. So I want you guys to identify what is the conclusion of this argument. So hold on to your guns, Akshit. Coming up is the frameworks, and I'm sure it's going to be a game changer for you as it has been for some of us students, and I'm going to share that detail with you as well. So Arpit says the answer is B. Gangadhar says E. Shomak says B. Shirdi says D. And I still have answers yet to come in. Muhammad believes it's E. And guys, what about the conclusion in your words? I'm waiting for that too, because that's the whole point. To if you have identified the conclusion correctly, high chances you will get the answer right. And if you haven't, high chances you will not get the answer correct for the right reasons. Yes. Okay, Shantan says it's C. Gagan says it's B. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of answers now. So mostly it's between, I think B is a very favorite, it seems, for this question. Yeah, I have got B's and E's. Okay, so Shomak is telling us that the conclusion is fair trade benefits farmers as farmers receive higher prices, but hurts non-fair trade farmers. Shomak, you're quite near, but not quite correct, as I will point out. Aryan says the answer is B. Arpit has also provided us with the conclusion. Arpit says the conclusion is in the second line that this practice may hurt more farmers in developing nations than it helps. Wonderful, Arpit. Exactly. That is the conclusion. And so, as I was telling Shomak a while back, that the issue is not that fair trade hurts non fair trade farmers. The issue is fair trade hurts more farmers than it helps. Okay. And that is a very, very, very subtle yet very clear distinction. Gautam also believes the answer is B. So let me get on with discussing this question. And I'm not going to do the pre-thinking. I'm going to show you the pre-thinking after I have shown you how to answer the question without pre-thinking. Okay. So I'm again repeating. I'm going to show you now how to answer this question without any pre-thinking. As I said earlier, pre-thinking starts when you're reading the stimulus. So let's say you finish reading the stimulus and nothing came to your mind. Then what should you do? Well, I'll show you what you should do instead of trying to force pre-think. So here's it. Let me read the stimulus because this is the this is the most important stage. An economist is saying something. Paying extra for fair trade coffee. Okay. So let's call it FT coffee. All right. So this economist is saying giving more money, extra money for fair trade coffee. And then he describes what is this fair trade coffee. It is coffee which has the label of fair trade logo. Paying extra is intended to help poor farmers. Okay, so the whole idea of giving more money, paying more money for fair trade coffee is meant to help poor farmers. Okay, because so in what way does this paying extra help poor farmers? Because they that means these poor farmers, they receive a higher price for the fair trade coffee they grow. So grow fair trade coffee, get a higher price, and that is how the poor farmers are supposed to be helped. So this here is definitely a premise telling us what the intention is behind paying extra for fair trade coffee. This practice may, now the moment you have this word may, you know that this is more likely to be the opinion of this economist. So this practice may, however is brought in to bring a contrast with what is stated earlier, that it was intended to help. However, This practice, that is the practice of paying extra for fair trade coffee, hurt more farmers in developing nations than it helps. So far, this looks to be like a conclusion, but whether it's the main conclusion or not, we will see. So the author says that paying this extra price to the farmers for growing fair trade coffee, it hurts more farmers in the developing nations than it helps. So the number of farmers that are hurt through this practice is higher than the number of farmers who are helped. That's what this sentence means. By raising average prices of coffee, okay, it seems as if the author is kind of going to explain how this whole mechanism hurts the farmers. Let's see. By raising average prices for coffee, it means the practice, okay, encourages more coffee to be produced. Okay, so because the farmer is receiving more money for growing fair trade coffee, therefore all the other farmers, they are also encouraged to grow fair trade coffee, and this so encourages more coffee to be produced than consumers want to buy. All right, so the higher profit probably attracts more people to grow the coffee. This lowers prices. So if more people produce coffee, there is more coffee than there is demand for that coffee, then what happens is it lowers the prices for non-fair trade coffee and thus lowers profits for non-fair trade coffee farmers. So this last portion is just a premise, this whole thing, again supporting the conclusion that more farmers are hurt than are helped by this practice. So the conclusion that we draw very clearly is paying extra for fair trade coffee, a practice intended to help farmers, may hurt more farmers than it helps. So more farmers are hurt by the policy than are helped. This is the crux. Okay, this is the crux, and you should be able to identify this crux. This will make your life easier. This will actually help you solve the question even if you haven't been able to pre-think. All right, so what to do next? Now next is identifying the scope of the argument. Scope of the argument is nothing else but telling you what kind of answer choice you are looking for, because remember, you have not really been able to pre-think, so you don't know what you are looking for. But at the same time, you can tell yourself, I am looking for any new piece of information, okay, that shows that. So you are looking for what kind of answer choice? Any new piece of information that shows that paying extra for fair trade coffee may hurt more farmers than it helps. So remember, just keep this in view when you are examining every choice. So let's say when you're looking at choice A, B, C, D, E, you keep this in view. Does this choice tell me that more farmers are hurt than are helped? Does this choice tell me more farmers are helped than it helps? Does this choice tell me? Keep on asking yourself like this. Whichever choice does not tell you that more farmers are hurt than are helped, that choice is out. That choice is out. This is how setting the scope of the argument is going to help you solve your question without pre-thinking. All right, so setting the scope of the argument is nothing else but telling yourself what kind of answer choice do you require. What is the scope of your conclusion? The scope of your conclusion is this: you've got to pick a choice which will confirm, which is going to tell you, since we are evaluating the strength of the economist's argument, that yes, more farmers are hurt by the policy than are helped. Okay, now since it's an evaluate question, the choice that you pick should also tell you that if it is not true, that piece of information, then our belief in the conclusion will be weakened. Okay, so we are looking for a choice which is one way or the other going to reflect on this conclusion, that that practice may hurt more farmers than it helps. All right, so once we have the scope of the argument, like literally written down on a piece of paper in front of us if required be, thereafter we go to the answer choices. So let's say, for example, here's choice A. All right, and let me quickly see if I have any questions here. Okay, so you're welcome, Shomak. So Aryan is asking a very important question at this juncture. He's saying that there are some words by which we can identify conclusion. Is it works every time? Well, Aryan, definitely. If you have a therefore, it means it is a conclusion. If you have a consequently, it means it's a conclusion. Okay. However, whether it is the main conclusion or not, that still remains to be seen. Having said that, there are cases where you don't have any conclusion markers, yet it is a conclusion. So that is to be understood by the way you analyze the stimulus. Like you keep asking yourself, okay, is this a fact? Is this something that acts as a premise? Or is this the opinion of someone? So you keep asking yourself questions like that to understand which portion is a conclusion, which one is not. But yes, to answer your question, if there is a conclusion marker, and we teach you about those in our course, it is a conclusion. So let me move to A says whether there is a way of alleviating. Alleviating means basically reducing, okay, the impact of the increased average price for coffee on non-fair trade coffee farmers' profits. Now, what this choice is really saying is that is there any other way so that the bad impact of the increased prices can be reduced on non-fair trade coffee farmers' profits? Okay, can we reduce that? Now, you've got to ask yourself, does this tell me that more farmers are hurt by the practice? No, this is not focusing on the central argument of the conclusion. Okay, this choice is focusing on the way to decrease the impact of the practice, but it is not focusing on whether the practice hurts more farmers or not. So this choice kind of accepts the fact that yes, the impact of paying extra fair trade coffee is bad, all right, but it does not help us to determine whether paying extra will hurt more farmers. This is what we decided, right? So this choice does not do this, and therefore it is out of scope, okay, and therefore it is incorrect. Now let's look at choice B, the most popular choice. What proportion? Now, the moment the word proportion pops up, I think, okay, I was supposed to identify whether more farmers are hurt by this practice or not. And more farmers, we are talking about proportion of farmers, perhaps. So let me just look at what this is saying. What proportion, okay, that is what percentage of coffee farmers in developing nations produce fair trade coffee? All right. So this means this is asking that of the total farmers in the developing nation, let's say if we have 100 farmers, then how many of those 100 farmers produce fair trade coffee? And therefore, the remaining would be producing non-fair trade coffee. All right. So let's see, take this to the test of extremes, there is this test where if you take the answer to this question to two absolute extremes, two opposite sides, and on both the extremes, if your conclusion is impacted, then this is the correct choice. So let's see. Suppose we say a very low proportion of farmers in developing nations produce fair trade coffee. That means out of 100 total coffee farmers, only 5 are fair trade coffee farmers. Then 95 non-fair trade would be hurt, right? Then our conclusion is valid. Okay. So a huge proportion of non-fair trade coffee farmers would really be hurt. And our conclusion that more farmers are hurt in the developing nation than it helps will come true. On the other hand, if there is a very high proportion, okay, if out of 100 total coffee farmers, if 95, let's say, or 90 of them are fair trade coffee farmers, then only 5 non-fair trade coffee farmers will get hurt. And therefore, the conclusion will not really be valid that we are hurting more farmers than we are helping more farmers. So choice B is definitely telling us that more farmers in developing nations are hurt than are helped by the practice. Okay. So see, you did not really pre-think about this. You just set your scope of the argument and you searched for an answer which would fall within that scope. An answer choice which would tell you, yes, more farmers are hurt. So this answer choice takes you in that direction. Let's see, let's rule out the other answer choices on solid grounds of reasoning as well, guys. So this is the text of extremes that we teach you in order to, confirm your answer choice, correct answer choice on the valid questions. Choice C, some of you did choose this. whether many coffee farmers, many means, say, really in GMAT terms, it's equivalent of some. So we are saying about, 2 to 3 or at least one coffee farmer in developing nations also derive income from other kinds of farming. Really, does this tell us more farmers are hurt by the practice? Does this choice tell us that the practice is going to hurt more farmers? No. This choice is telling us farmers might be deriving income from other kinds of farming. All right. Okay, that tells us that the farmer is probably going to derive the likelihood from some other thing. But this does not tell us whether the profits from the non-fair trade coffee is going to go down or not. So C is out of scope and incorrect. D was also there among one of the choices chosen today. It says whether consumers should pay extra for fair trade coffee. So whether consumers should pay extra for fair trade coffee if doing so lowers profits for non-fair trade coffee farmers. Now, this is a dilemma for the consumers. It does not tell us whether more farmers are hurt or not. Okay, it is just putting a question mark on whether the consumers should be ready to pay or not. So totally out. He says, how fair trade coffee farmers in developing nations could be helped without lowering profits for non-fair trade coffee farmers. Again, this is trying to seek for another way of helping the fair trade coffee farmers, but it doesn't really tell you that the current practice is harmful or not. Okay, it does not help us decide that more farmers are hurt by the policy. It does not fall within the scope of the argument and therefore is incorrect. Can you see that, guys, how without pre-thinking you can actually answer the question? So I've got some questions here. Let me see. Okay. All right. So Kriti is asking, can we also conclude that the number of non-fair trade farmers is higher than the fair trade farmers? We cannot conclude that, Kriti. We cannot really conclude that the number is higher. All right. That's the question we are asking. And that's just a question about proportion. All right. Okay. Can we work as to weaken the conclusion? Now, Vivek, when you're doing the evaluate question, you come up with an answer choice which can work both ways. Okay. If taken to one extreme, it can weaken. If taken to the other extreme, it can strengthen, as we have seen on the correct answer choice today. Our Aryan is saying, if we like, we have two words which indicates conclusion. So which to choose the main one, and also like how to differentiate between the two. Well, Arian, we do have a method for that also. If you have two sentences, let's say both beginning with therefore, then how to decide which one is the conclusion? We have a since X, therefore Y test. To find out more about it, you can probably log on to our free trial, the link for which Piyush will provide in a short while. So, because, in the interests of the discussion today, we'll have to limit it. But you can simply ask which of the therefore sentence is the cause and which of the therefore sentence is the effect of that cause. So the effect, the cause sentence becomes the premise and the effect sentence is your main conclusion. All right, so I hope all your answers are okay, cool. So guys, as I was saying that I will show you both the methods today. One, I will show you what to do when you cannot pre-think. So just simply identify the scope of the argument and examine each answer choice against that scope. This really helps. Try it out. And now I'm going to take you to that part which is really amazing. It's path breaking, not just amazing. Okay. But before that, if you were to pre-think on this question, if you were pre-thinking, then what you would do is you would quickly try to look for the logical gaps. So what is given in the passage is paying extra for fair trade coffee raises the average coffee prices. And once the average coffee prices are raised, it encourages more than can be consumed coffee production. It encourages more coffee to be produced than can be consumed. That lowers the non-fair trade coffee prices and therefore lowers the prices for profits for non-fair trade coffee farmers. So this is what we know from the passage. This kind of working, this kind of simplification you can do in your mind. So the conclusion is more farmers are hurt by the policy than helped. Now, the logical gap is how many farmers are actually growing fair trade coffee and how many are growing non fair trade coffee. We don't know that. If we don't know that, we can't really say whether more farmers are hurt by the policy than are helped. Okay. So, therefore, we kind of take some numbers and work with it, and this I've already shown you on choice B. Eventually, you're going to do the same thing. Over there, you did it without really putting your mind to it. You just put the scope of the conclusion and you derive the answer. So an evaluate question would be formed along the lines, what is the percentage of farmers growing fair trade coffee or non-fair trade coffee? All right. So if you were to pre-think, you would do it like this. You would notice the logical gaps. But if you were not able to notice the logical gap, straight away, identifying the scope helps. Okay. Now for the the most important part next, guys. Understanding that students have problems with pre-thinking, we have derived these special frameworks. Like, imagine if someone were to tell you what to pre-think, exactly what to think on a question, it would be really easy for you, right? Your life would be so easy, isn't it? So we at GMATWhiz have exactly this for you. Through our research, we have identified, you can call it a sort of formulae, that, a kind of mathematical formula, if you may call it, a framework which you can help you to pre-think in the right direction. So the objective of a pre-thinker guide is very, very simple. We have noticed that a pre-thinker faces these problems. Often you feel clueless when you're asked to pre-think. So you put your time and energy into thinking in the wrong direction, and sometimes you come up with a half-baked assumption or even a totally incorrect assumption, so you wasted time. Okay, and then therefore you choose the incorrect answer choice. So what we've done, the solution to this is the pre-thinkers guide. It contains 4 very, very simple frameworks using which you can pre-think efficiently and effectively. So I'm going to talk to you about this. Okay. um, but before that, let me also talk to you about how these pre-thinking frameworks have really helped a few of our students. So that is Rajiv Arora, okay, one of our most recent success stories. And he was stuck at a 680, that is with a V34, for quite some time. He tried quite a few courses, online and offline both, and spent over a year and a half preparing. He came to us in the last few months, about 5 months ago, and uh, he took up our course and he improved. Especially, now why I'm mentioning him here especially is he improved his score from 680 to 740 with a from a V34 to V41. But what was a game changer for him was that he improved his CR percentile from a 57 to a 96 percentile, and primarily because he used the framework driven pre-thinking. Okay. Similarly, we've got Vamshi, okay, another one of our recent success stories, who started with a low score of 570 with just a V26. But just after 10 months, 7 of which he was with us, he improved to a 720 with a V38. And the best part is he scored a CR 51 in just his second attempt. And we all know that CR 51 is the highest you can get in CR. All right. Uh, Piyush will share the links to the debriefs, the success stories, the live videos of these 2 students. If you want to find out more about them, you can definitely check them out. But this is just to show you, just 2 examples to show you how the framework driven approach really makes a difference, a huge difference in CR. And 1/3 of your section is CR. All right. So that's the success story. And let me get back to our pre-thinkers guide. So you can see there, I think Piyush has shared the link of Rajiv and Vamshi's debriefs with you. You can check up anytime on that. All right. So Gagan has asked a very important question, that how to do all this in less than 2 minutes. Well, Gagan, therein lies the benefit of a course like ours. For every question that is served to you on the course, we provide you with solutions which tell you exactly whether you're thinking in the right direction or not. And you learn to do that bit by bit. You learn to master the approach. You have dedicated mentors who can kind of nudge you in the right direction whenever needed. Um, Manidhar is asking whether the answer for evaluating the question can also be an assumption. Well, often an assumption is the evaluation questions are modeled along the lines of the assumption. So yes, definitely true. Definitely. Okay. So let me move on. Those are the two most recent success stories, and we've got many more. But these two were the ones which just most recent ones, and which really show you how important it is to really have a proper guided pre-thinking. So in our research, what we were able to identify at GMATWhiz was there are four very common types, not the only types, but the most common construction types. And you would also identify with us that you have these typical argument constructions in some of these question types. Okay, you have the plan goal questions, questions which talk about a plan with a particular goal, and there are some details given to you about the plan and the goal, and the conclusion is usually about either the plan is going to be a success or not going to be a success, and you are called upon to strengthen or weaken or evaluate these plans. All right, then you have another very common type, the causality based questions, where the construction has a causality in a causal relationship in the conclusion of the argument. We're going to talk about this presently, and this conclusion contains a cause and effect, um, and you know we are supposed to either strengthen that causality, weaken that causality, and so on. So these are two of those constructions. The third and fourth constructions are comparison based questions and quant based questions. So in comparison based questions, you typically have two scenarios, and a comparison is drawn between the two scenarios. The scenario can be anything, like two methods are being used, or two technologies are being used, or you have two different categories of people, and so on and so forth. And often the advantage over one is compared to the other, and conclusions are drawn. So we have frameworks for such kinds of questions, how to pre-think in such kinds of questions. Similarly, you have quant-based questions where simple quantitative calculations are required of you, mostly featuring around the understanding of profits in percentages. And we've got a framework to help you think on those questions, which talk about profitability and revenues and costs and such like. Sometimes you can also have a simple question which is based on multiple types. You can have a plan and a goal plus a causal argument, or a question which has two plans which are being compared, and so on. So today we are going to discuss only the first of, we are going to discuss these two frameworks because the time is limited. For more details, you can definitely visit our trial, a free trial, and Piyush has, I think, already shared the link with you of that free trial. You can find out more about these frameworks. All right. Okay. So first, I'm going to discuss the framework for causal arguments, and I'm sure some of you might be wondering what is this causal argument. All right. So I'm going to first very briefly talk to you about what is a causal argument, and then I'm going to show you how this framework works. Okay. So just hold on to your questions. I'm sure you're eager to find out what is this framework. Okay. It's very simple, actually, guys. So first, let me discuss what is a causality. In GMAT CR, some stimulus contain cause and effect relationships, all right? Where event A causes event B. There's one event which is, let's call it event A, and that is the cause behind another event, that is event B. Okay? So event A is called the cause, and event B is called the effect of the cause. And let's look at an example to understand this. Let's say if we have a sentence like, the unusually low amount of rainfall this year caused or led to or resulted in low production of corn. Here, event A would be the cause, that is, the unusually low amount of rainfall this year would be the cause, and it led to event B, that is low production of corn. Such a kind of relationship is known as a cause-effect relationship. And when such a cause-effect relationship is given in the conclusion of an argument, that argument is called a causal argument. Okay. Now, what is the core assumption behind a causal argument? And because the framework works on this. Now, the interesting thing is on a causal argument contains certain assumptions, but these assumptions are same for all causal arguments. In most other arguments, the assumption depends on the scenario, but in a causal argument, the assumption is always the same. When I say always the same, I'm talking about broadly the same. How? Let's take an example. Okay, let's read this example together. The number of vehicles, okay, the number of vehicles being driven on the roads has increased in the last 1 year. Okay. And along with that, so along with the increase in the number of vehicles, there has been an increase in air pollution levels. So this whole thing is giving me a premise, information, a piece of information here, which says that two things have happened around the same time. Okay. Number of vehicles has increased, number of vehicles being driven on the roads, and there has been an increase in the air pollution. This is what the premise tells us, and the premise says that this happened around the same time, okay, in the last 1 year. However, let's see what the conclusion says. It says the exhaust from the vehicles must have led to the increase in pollution levels. So the author is drawing a cause and effect relationship in the conclusion, all right, whereas the premise is just telling us both happened in the last 1 year. But the author is saying that the first event caused the second event. All right. So here we've got to ask, what are the assumptions that the author is making while drawing this cause and effect relationship? When the author is saying that the increase in the number of vehicles is the one thing that led to the increase in air pollution, what is he assuming? So let's see what he's assuming. The first assumption that the author makes in a causal argument is event A must have happened before event B, then only event A can be the cause of event B, of course, right? So that's the central assumption, the core assumption, that the cause must have happened before the effect, okay? Similarly, the second most important assumption is nothing other than event A caused event B. In other words, there is no alternate cause that caused event B. This is the central idea behind a causal argument. So what this assumption really means is increase in pollution levels did not take place because of any reason other than the increase in the number of vehicles. Okay, that's the second assumption. And the third assumption is there is no reverse causality, that somehow the effect was not the cause behind the cause. I mean, though it sounds nonsensical, what it means here is the increase in the air pollution did not lead to the increase in the number of vehicles. Okay. So these are the three core assumptions. And if you negate any one of these assumptions, the causality in the conclusion will not hold true. For example, if you can prove that there is some other cause that led to the increase in the air pollution. Let's say if you say the number of manufacturing industries increased in the last 1 year, and you show that that could be another cause for increase in air pollution, that would break my conclusion, and therefore that would break the causality. So these are the three assumptions, and our framework is built along these lines. So what's that framework? So we've already established that a causal argument is one in which the conclusion contains a cause and effect relationship, guys. Okay, this is very important. So the core assumption is no other cause is responsible for the stated effect. Now the framework that works is like this. The first thing that you do is you identify the causality. Okay, you might find this very simple, but trust me, a lot of us go wrong here. We go wrong in identifying the exact cause and the exact effect. So here, the causality, let's call the cause X, and let's call the effect Y. Okay. So identifying the causality is important, first step. And then we follow the three guidelines. The first guideline is we look at a choice which says that X happened before Y. Okay. No, that means X happened before Y means there is no other relationship or correlation between X and Y. Say, for example, X and Y were not because of a coincidence, or there was no third common cause, which was basically causing X and Y at the same time. So X happened before Y would be one of the one of the guidelines of the framework. So you can look for an answer choice along these lines, along this guideline. The second guideline would be to look for a choice that rules out any alternate cause. Okay, nothing else caused Y, or there's no alternate cause. If there were any other cause possible behind the effect, the author could not have arrived at the conclusion. Third guideline is no reverse causality. Okay, Y could not have caused X. So these are the three core assumptions. And in any causal question, any assumption causal question, your answer choice has to lie within these three. Okay, you can also use the same guidelines for identifying a strengthener or a weakener in a causal argument. All right. So I want you to use this, try to use this framework in this question. Okay, I want you to try to do it, and I'm of course going to show you how to do it properly. But first, I want you guys to give this a shot. This is a GMATWhiz question. It is a 700 plus level question. Okay, so go ahead, guys. All the best. I'm going to mute myself for a couple of minutes. Before that, let me see. I have some questions here. Okay, no, I think all of them are answered. So go ahead, guys. All right, I am waiting for your answers to start coming in. I guess it takes a while. All right, so Gautam says E, Manish says A, Jural says A, Gangadhar says D. All right, let me wait a little bit for some more answers. I've got Connie. Hi, Connie. She says it should be D. Manidhar says it should be B. Candy says it should be A. Gagan says D. So I've got A, D, B so far. And there is no one favorite, it seems. Well, let's see. And I guess a few more are. So Arpit says A. All right. So it seems A is gaining favor over the others. Well. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that question, guys. Um, and all our questions are of the type which really test what GMAT tests you for. Isha says it should be E. Okay, so here goes my explanation, guys. We have more questions coming up, so I'm going to be a little ruthless for against time. Now, again, as I said, the trick is in reading the stimulus correctly. Okay, so let's see. 50 years ago, crocodiles were brought to the waters of Fauna County. So this is a premise here. It is giving us a factual piece of information that crocodiles were from somewhere else. They were kind of introduced to Fauna County. Excessive predation, that means excessive hunting by the huge crocodile population, now threatens the mena fish. All right. So we've already understood that crocodiles did not earlier exist in Fauna County. They were brought to the county. Okay, and then we know that the current situation is the crocodiles are now found in huge numbers, and crocodiles are now found in huge numbers, and they are preying excessively. They are eating the mena fish in significant numbers, and they pose a danger to the mena population. They are going to reduce the mena population, and we are also told that mena is the only source of omega-3 for the locals. So in such a short sentence, you have so many pieces of information given to you. All right, great. We can draw an inference here. Inferring is a very, very, very important skill. So we can infer that the local people are likely facing a shortage in their only supply of omega-3 because of the crocodile population growing. All right, let's move on. The county officials plan. So we have now, my ears kind of perk up the moment I hear about the word plan. Okay, and I know, oh, I'm going to now use the framework. So anyways, the county officials plan to reduce the crocodile population. They want to kill the crocodiles and reduce the population. How? By introducing the Runa fish, which contains a chemical highly poisonous to crocodiles but harmless for humans. Okay. So we know that the county officials want to bring down the numbers of crocodiles in the county waters, and there is a plan to introduce Runa fish, which is poisonous for crocodiles, but it is not poisonous to humans. Okay. So this is here the plan. All along so far we have premises. We don't have any conclusions so far. However, there is a possibility that the Runa will harm the small native lizards that live in the water. Okay, so these Runa fish, not only will they kill the crocodiles, they will also kind of cause harm to those small native lizards that live in the water. All right. So there is a contrast out there, which means the plan has a small drawback. The Runa might cause harm to the small native lizards. The officials plan, therefore. Now, the moment we have a therefore here, we know that we are looking at the conclusion of the argument. May be good for the county people, but will obviously increase the threat to native aquatic life. So native aquatic life here would include lizards. And remember, the crocodiles are not natives, by the way. So there we have a conclusion that the plan may be good for the county people, but the plan will increase the danger to the native aquatic life. Okay, all right. So that's our conclusion. Now, if you notice, the conclusion contains two kind of a cause and two effects. One is a bad effect, one is a good effect. Like the cause is the plan to introduce the Runa fish. That's the cause. Introduce the Runa fish, which is poisonous to crocodiles. One effect will be good for the county people, okay, because we can kind of infer here that the omega-3 supply will no longer be threatened, so it will be good for the county people. Effect two is the threat to the native aquatic life, such as the lizards, will increase. Now my question to you is, which of these effects is the main intention of the author, guys? Yes, answer me. Which of these is the main intention of the author, the main conclusion? Which of these effects is the main conclusion? Yes, quickly. There are two effects in the conclusion, right? The plan has a good effect and a bad effect. Which of these effects is your conclusion? The question is about, the assumption behind the conclusion. So which of Okay, so Connie says, so Gotham is saying eliminating the crocodile population is the conclusion. Um, well, not really. Connie says good to people is the conclusion. No, Connie. I'll explain how. Manish says um, the plan will increase the threat is the conclusion. Manidhar says effect one is the conclusion. Harsh says second one. Gagan says second. Abhilash says the first one. So basically, some of you are you guys differ in your opinion, and of course both of them are not the conclusions of the argument. So how do we know? How do we understand? Well, let's go back to our argument. Remember, in a nutshell, the author is saying may be good for the county people. Okay, so the emphasis is not on this part. The emphasis is the plan will increase. This is something that the author is sure will happen, will increase the danger to the native aquatic life. So that's the main piece of information the author wants to give here. That well, all this plan about reducing the crocodile population is good, but then what about the native aquatic life? The danger will increase. So clearly here, our framework is going to be the cause is the plan to introduce the Runa fish. Okay, that's the cause, and that cause is going to lead to the effect that it will increase the threat to the native aquatic life. Okay, so now if we apply the first guideline, X happened before Y, it does not apply here because the plan has not been put into action yet. Let's go to guideline 2. No alternate cause can lead to the stated effect. Now, what is the stated effect? The stated effect is increase the threat to native aquatic life, which means we are going to say that there is nothing else at present that can cause an increase in the threat to the native aquatic life. That means we are assuming that nothing else poses an increase to the threat to the native aquatic life, or nothing else is a bigger threat to the native aquatic life. What if the native aquatic life is currently facing a bigger threat than the one from Runa? Let's say, what if the small lizards are also being preyed upon by the crocodiles? So in that case, if you kill the crocodiles, then you are actually doing the small lizards something good instead of doing something bad. Okay, that then you're reducing the threat to the native aquatic life, and in that way the conclusion is going to break down. So right now we are assuming that there is nothing else which is more harmful to the small lizards other than the Runa fish. Okay, so that is assumption 1. Okay, then we can look at guideline 3. There is no reverse causality. So the author is also assuming that the small lizards will not cause any harm to the Runa fish. Okay, small lizards can, if the small lizards can harm the Runa fish, then also the conclusion breaks down. By adding the Runa fish, there will be no increase to the threat to native aquatic life. Okay, so we have come up with 2 assumptions. We have come up with the assumption that nothing else is a threat to the native aquatic life, than the introduction of the Runa fish, and we have come up with the assumption that the small lizards don't cause any significant harm to the Runa fish. Now, a lot of you have chosen choice A. Now, did you see how smoothly I worked in the framework, guys? How smoothly it just slipped in. I didn't have to do anything. I just took the framework and I just kind of applied it to the given cause and effect. And you saw how identifying the cause and effect was very important. If you thought the effect was maybe good for the people, your entire argument would have collapsed. Okay, so let me carry on with my explanation. The officials have not been able to come up with an alternative plan to reduce crocodile population that will be completely safe for the native aquatic life. Now, we are talking about an assumption. Okay, all right. A is saying they don't have any alternative plan. Ask yourself, does this have to be true? It's certainly not falling within any one of our 3 guidelines. Okay, so anyways, I can rule it out that on the basis of that. And on the other hand, I can ask myself that if I negate this, okay, let's say if the officials did come up with an alternative plan, they came up with an alternative plan, but did they think of applying that? Are we even concerned with an alternative plan? Are we looking to identify any assumption behind an alternative plan? No. Even if the officials came up with a completely safe plan, they decided to use the Runa. Okay, so this is totally out of scope. A lot of y'all chose this, guys. Please understand, whether the officials were able or not able to come up with an alternative plan is not necessary to my conclusion that the plan will definitely increase the threat to native aquatic life. It is possible they came up with an alternative plan but found that plan too costly. Okay, so whether or not they came up with an alternative plan is not a must be true condition. Okay, and it definitely is not a part of one of those three guidelines, so it is totally out. B, controlled experiments have proved the ability of the Runa to bring down the crocodile population by a significant percentage. Now, this choice supports the success of the plan. Okay, if there have been experiments that have proved that Runa does bring down the crocodile population, it strengthens the conclusion. But ask yourself, does it have to be true? Is it a necessary condition? Should there have to be, I mean, is it necessary that there must have been some control experiment to show the effectiveness of Runa, for the Runa to really have an impact? Okay, so again, here understand, uh, we are not concerned with bringing down the crocodile population. That's not our conclusion. Okay, this is not our conclusion. Our conclusion is that officials plan will obviously increase the threat to the native aquatic life. So B is again totally out. Okay, it could strengthen the one part of the plan, but it will definitely not, it will definitely not be the assumption behind the main plan, and that is, sorry, the main outcome of the plan, and that is increase in the threat to native aquatic life. So B is out. C, the Runa fish often prey on the eggs of the small lizards, thus reducing their population. Now, per the passage, Runa can cause harm to small lizards. We already know, right? There is a possibility that Runa will harm the small lizard. So this choice is just telling us something we already know. We just, in what way the harm may be caused. But this is not really a new piece of information. It's just what we call a distortion and half-truth trap, and is therefore out. Crocodiles currently do not face the threat of predation from any animals in Fauna County. Now, this is a very interesting choice. This is telling us that the crocodiles are currently not facing any threat of predation. One, we are not really concerned with whether the crocodile population will go down or not. However, let's try the trial by negation technique here. Negated choice says the crocodiles currently face the threat of predation from some animals in the Fauna County. If some land animals prey on crocodiles, okay, what will happen? There will be a reduction in the food supply, okay, in the food supply of these land animals when the Runa is introduced. So the wildlife will suffer. The wildlife will suffer. We don't know whether the native aquatic life will suffer or not. So there is no impact on the conclusion. If the predators are aquatic animals, then if the crocodiles are killed, reduction of their food supply by killing the crocodiles might affect the aquatic life. So then it strengthens the conclusion. But that is not what an assumption is supposed to do, have an ambiguous impact. So totally out of scope. Okay. Come to date. For the native lizard populations, excessive predation by crocodiles is not the most significant threat, which means there is no alternate threat. Okay, we are saying excessive predation by crocodiles, this is your alternate cause. We are saying there is no alternate cause which is going to increase the threat at the moment, and therefore E is the correct answer. So I think very few of you got that right. I think I can just quickly pop in. Akshit got that right. So good work, Akshit. Really good work. Isha got that right. Wonderful work, Isha. All right. Gautam got that right. So wonderful to all of you. Not an easy question, but if you have the framework, you know what to accept and what not to accept. So Arpit is asking a question. The conclusion said that the threat will increase. So, well, the point is that nothing else will increase the threat. Yes, by negating E, even then we can say that the threat could increase by introducing Runa. Yes, Arpit, you can. But the point is you will only arrive to that level after you have analyzed the stimulus correctly. All right. Also understand one thing. there are a lot of questions where you won't really be able to do this. That is, bring it down to the negation immediately. And therefore, that is where the framework really helps. Okay, the framework really helps in that case to cut short your time on pre-thinking, and that's the purpose. All right, so I'm sure you guys must be wondering that, well, I have learned a new framework today. Now, learning an approach and really mastering that approach are two very different things, okay? So how can you master the approach? You may learn the approach in one of these sessions online that are taken, but that's not the right way to master the approach. In order to master the approach, you must consistently be able to solve the question in this manner, and you should also be able to check whether you solved it according to that manner or not. Say today you have learned this framework and you try to solve it on your own. How do you verify that you are following the right path? Okay, for that you need to refer to solutions following a consistent and logical method, and we at our end, we provide dedicated lessons on causal arguments and causal frameworks. We provide solutions to all the causal arguments in the same consistent manner so that you can solve that question, you can apply the framework, and then you can check whether you followed the right approach. So you can verify each question irrespective of whether you get it right or not. People usually think that one should only analyze when they get a question wrong. You couldn't be more wrong, guys. Every question that you solve, the purpose of solving that question is only achieved when you verify that you have got the question right for the right reasons. And if you have got it wrong, why you got it wrong. You should spend 80% of your time reviewing the stimulus analysis, which you will only get it when you follow a proper dedicated online course. Okay, so if we are providing you with the framework, then each of our solutions will be providing you with that same framework, the same kind of analysis, and you would be able to check up. You would be able to note down the variances in your approach when you compare it to the solutions that we have provided you with. So then you can master the right approach. You know, we have these concept booster lessons after every video lesson, after every lesson, which is focused on helping you apply the method for each of the topics. And that is how you master the approach and not merely learn and leave it at that. So let me quickly introduce make a very important announcement, guys. With round 2 not very far away, and for those of you looking to give the exam by the end of December, we are launching a 4-week verbal crash course. This is ideal for scoring a V40 plus. So what you get here is the entire verbal course and 30 hours of live classes. I'll be taking all of those classes, guys, each of those classes focusing on the various areas, the SC, CR, and RC. You'll be getting 50 hours of video lessons and 900 plus practice questions. Okay, you saw a sample of that question just a while back on that crocodile question. So all of this you're going to get at the special price of just $199. That's about 14,490 INR. Okay, we're starting the batch from December 5th, guys. That's a weekend, but you will have to take up by the course a week before that, because the way we conduct this course is you spend a week fulfilling the prerequisites of the class, and over the weekend you have classes, and then again you spend the weekdays following up on the prerequisites for the next series of classes. So we'll be doing around about 30 hours of live sessions where all your doubts, all the issues that bother you, whether it is sentence correction or it is RC or it is CR, we will be solving those. So any of you who are interested, Piyush will share the link to the crash course with you, and you can definitely check it out at your leisure. But remember, if you are to begin with me on December 5th, you have to enroll at least a week before that so that you can cover the prerequisites, guys. All right. So there's the link to the crash course, guys. Thank you, Akshit. Akshit really appreciated that question. I'm happy you did. I do remember, Akshit, you telling me that you'd solved that question, the first question, and I told you I'm going to really, there are some good things in store. All right. So with that, let me move on to the next framework. And this is, again, I'm sure, guys, you will identify that you'll get a lot of these questions, which are plan goal arguments, you know, a plan and a goal and a prediction for the plan and a prediction for the success and failure, and evaluate the plan and so on. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to solve this question. Now, this is a slightly easier question because I want to show you the framework, and then I'm going to bring up a really tough question. Okay, so quickly, guys, I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to solve that. And in the meantime, I'm going to mute myself. So I know we've kind of overreached the time a bit. So another 15 minutes or so, and we're going to have this framework in our bags. All right, guys. So that's a really simple question, and I'm expecting your answers to come jumping and leaping in. Again, the whole purpose of this question was just to kind of demonstrate the plan goal framework to you guys. So let's have your answers. That's a simple question, actually. Okay. So I have Isha, Arpit, Gagan, Manidhar, Somak all agreeing on D. And as I said, it's not a very difficult question, but the purpose of the question is to quickly show you this plan goal framework, which you can learn today and then perhaps master it with our help. Okay. So let me go to the now this what is very important for the framework to work is that you should understand the argument very carefully, okay, and you apply this framework when you are pre-thinking or after analyzing the stimulus. So let's analyze the stimulus correctly. In order to protect their rice crops from devastation by pests, so um, step one, the first sentence says it's a premise, and when you're saying in order to, we know that we are talking about a plan here and a goal here. The in order to is like signifying the goal, and then we have the plan. So in order to, so the aim is to protect the rice crop from destruction by pests, and the farmers of Lethoso have decided to introduce a species of black ants. Okay. Okay, so this presents a plan and a goal. Let's see what the second sentence does. Research conducted on the ants says that these ants secrete liquids that are absorbed by the soil. So some liquid is given out by these ants, and that is absorbed by the soil. And these liquids help the plants to ward off the pests that year after year harm the yields. The second sentence is also a premise. It's telling you about a third party finding of the research, and it also presents the mechanism of the plan, how the plan is going to work. The black ants are going to give out some liquid, and that is something that the plants are going to absorb and ward off the pests. Okay, fine. Therefore, so here we have our conclusion marker. The farmers are expecting full yields in the coming season. So based on the second premise, the author is concluding that the farmers, they believe that they are going to have full yields in the coming season. So we have to identify what the farmers have assumed while they were coming up with the plan. Okay, so basically we have to find out the assumption behind the plan. All right. Step 2 is the pre-thinking, and this is where we apply the framework. So pay close attention. I'm going to show you how the framework is developed. Since this question is based on the plan and goal structure, so we will put this framework in work. The framework is you identify the exact plan. So step 1 is you identify the exact plan. What is the exact plan here? You have to be very clear about it. You could, when you're practicing this framework, you could write down the exact plan if you want. So here the plan is to introduce a species of black ants. Then you identify the exact goal. Same thing. Be very precise about what is the goal. Here the goal is to protect the rice crops from pests. Okay, let's see. So the first guideline of the framework would be what happened during the planning stage. Okay, now this is like trying to follow the thoughts of the author or the farmers when they were planning. Consider what is given about the steps taken to formulate the plan. Now here you can think of some unknown factor that would impact the goal and that was not taken into consideration during the planning stage. So here the plan is based on the findings of the research, okay? And the findings of the research are third party finding and open to debate. So what if the findings of the research are not correct? In that case, the black ants may not really be effective, okay? And then our conclusion would break down. So author has assumed that the research findings are accurate and will work as expected. So the assumption has been made during the planning stage that the research is accurate. The black ants will do exactly what the research says they will do. Similarly, you can think about what happened. Guideline 2 is what happened during the execution stage. The first guideline is what happened during the planning stage, and you can think more along those lines, but we're just doing a short thinking here. The second guideline is what happened during the execution stage. Consider what are the steps taken to carry out the plan. Then you can think about some adverse effect of the plan that would impact the goal. For example, here the farmers have decided to introduce the black ants, okay, and we don't have any information about this aspect. We can think ahead, but what might happen. So let's say the passage talks about one effect of the black ants. What about some other effects of the black ants that could affect the conclusion, that is, could affect the crops? What if the black ants start eating away at the plants? In that case, the yields again would be devastated, and then our conclusion would break down. So the second assumption that has been made is the farmers have assumed that the black ants themselves will not feed on the plants. All right? The black ants themselves will not feed on the plants once they are introduced. So see, you came up with two assumptions with the help of those guidelines. Let's carry on. What if the plants absorb the liquid secreted by ants and the liquid secreted absorbed by the plants reduce the plant yields? They ward off the pests, but they reduce the plant yields. Then again, our conclusion would break down. So the third assumption made by the farmers is the liquid secretions of the black ants will not cause any harm to the crops so as to reduce the yields. Three assumptions already. Wow. I'm sure you were not able to come with those three assumptions. What is the third guideline is to think about any other connection between the plan and the goal. You look for a missing link that is mandatory for connecting the plan to the goal. That has been not given but has been assumed. Say, for example, the farmers are expecting full yields this season. They expect the black ants to drive away the pests. Fine. But what if something other than the pests cause devastation to the crops in the coming season? So what if some weather condition causes damage to the crops? In that case also, the full yields cannot be expected and the conclusion would break down. So the fourth assumption that we can identify here is the farmers have assumed that nothing else will cause any harm to the crops to reduce the yields. So with those four assumptions, we can now eliminate the answer choice. So now this is a simple question, guys. And perhaps this thinking could be some of this thinking could be intuitive, but I'm sure you were not able to think of those four things all at one time. So these are the guidelines that you can use on every plan goal question to think of at least one assumption, at least one strengthener, at least one weakener. Step 3 is answer choice elimination. Let's look at the first choice. The weather and soil conditions in the coming season will remain identical to those in most previous seasons. It's an assumption question, guys. The conditions do not have to be identical. Even with slight variations in the conditions, the yields could still be full. So this is a strengthener, but definitely not an assumption. Okay. And you would have seen that this was not one of the assumptions that we actually came up with. Okay. So chances of you going wrong is very, very low using this framework. B, the secretions of the black ants add nitrogen to the soil, which helps in promoting the growth of the rice grains. Now, this choice supports the plan, but it is not a must be true condition. Okay. And if you try the negation technique, that the secretions of the black ants do not add nitrogen, which helps in promoting growth of the rice grains, even if no nitrogen is added to the soil by the secretions, the yield can be expected to be more. So, this does not break the conclusion. And therefore, it's not the correct answer choice. And this was just to show you the trial by negation technique here. It's a strengthener at best. Choice C, the black ants are herbivores are known to have and are known to have a voracious appetite. Now, this kind of hints that the black ants might eat the rice plants too, since they're herbivores and they eat a lot. So definitely a weakener, but not an assumption. D, the rice plants are not vulnerable to the liquid secretions of the black ants. Absolutely. This choice is along the lines of the assumption 3, which says that the farmers have assumed that the liquid secretions of the black ants will not cause any harm to the crops. Okay, so as easy as that. Farmers have decided to go for pest resistant variety of seeds in the coming season. This kind of goes against the intent of the passage. It shows that the farmers don't believe in the current plan and want to go for some other plan. So this is totally out. Okay, now so that framework we want you to use in this official question, guys. Quickly go ahead with this. And that's the last question of this session. So let's hope you can successfully apply the plan goal framework on this question. It's a 700 plus level question, guys. Go ahead. All right. So I am going to look at the answers that are there. So far as I can see, Arpit and Candy and Shomak think it's B. Mr. thinks it's A. And let's have some more answers. Manidhar believes it's D. Vikram believes it's E. And I hope you guys tried to put in that framework there, and you can keep trying with some of the other questions that you solve in your preparation. But remember, for you to really be able to learn those techniques, master it rather, you need to have a kind of a place where you can match your thinking, your use of the framework correctly with the correct solutions. Manish believes it's B. Okay, so let me get started with the discussion on this. All right. So 12 years ago, and again 5 years ago, we are talking about two periods in the past. All right. So these are two periods in the past here. There were extended periods when the Darfur Republic's currency, so we're talking about a country, Darfur Republic, and we're talking about its currency. Twice in the past, its currency, the Pundra, was weak. And what is meant by weak? Its value, that is, the value of Pundra, was unusually low relative to the world's most stable currencies. All right. So the value of Pundra was very low 12 years ago, and the value of Pundra was very low 5 years ago. Okay. And at that point of time, this value was much lower than the values of other stable currencies. Okay. Both times, a weak Pundra made Darfur's manufactured products a bargain on world markets. What does this mean? It means that because the Pundra was weak, the Darfur's products were cheaper on the world market. Okay. And Darfur's exports were substantially up. All right. That means at that point of time, because Darfur's currency was weak, and its products were cheaper on the world market, it was exporting more. Okay, fine. So this is the situation that happened twice in the past. Now some politicians are saying that in order to cause another similarly sized increase in exports, the government should allow the Pundra to become weak again. Okay, so it seems that the goal is to bring about another similar sized increase in exports, and the plan is to deliberately weaken the Pundra. Okay, let's see. So far as we can understand is that this is a plan goal question, but let's see what we have to do. Which of the following, if true, provides the government with the strongest grounds to doubt that the politician's recommendation will achieve its aim? So basically, we've got to cast a doubt on the plan. That means we've got to show that the plan might not work. Okay, we've got to come up with a choice. If you are like really looking at the conclusion is in order to cause another similarly sized increase in exports, the government should allow the Pundra to become weak again, because twice in the history, weak Pundra has led to high exports. If I were to go by the scope of the argument method, then I would be looking for any new piece of information that shows that weakening the Pundra will not cause another similar sized increase in exports. I'm looking for a choice that says this. Okay. On the other hand, if I apply the framework, all right, I'm showing you both the approaches. You identify the exact plan and goal. What is the plan? Weaken the Pundra again. What is the goal? Cause another similarly sized increase in exports. The three guidelines. What happened during the planning stage? Well, clearly, these politicians, they believe that whatever conditions existed twice in the past, the same conditions will exist today. So they have assumed that whatever played out in the past will play out again now. That's the assumption when they are planning to make the Pundra weak again. Okay, now we must understand that if you have to export more, you should also have people ready to buy, and you should also be able to produce that amount that needs to be exported. What if Darfur cannot produce enough to increase the exports by that amount? So here if we have a choice which says that the manufacturing industry cannot produce enough to achieve the similar size exports, then that will cast a doubt on the plan. Okay. And any other connection between the plan and the goal. Of course, we're talking about increase in exports, so that means some other countries have to increase their imports. There should be a similar demand for Darfur exports, right? So that means any choice which tells you that there isn't enough demand for Darfur's exports, that will also weaken your plan. See how easy it is to really come up with those three. Can you see that, guys? Yes. I mean, if you already came up with those, good. But can you see how easy it really can become? Not one, not two. You can come up with three, four weaknesses. All right. Any one of these could be your answer choice. So as I said, rather than just take this question as a sample, think about it like this, that this is a process which you can use on the most difficult questions. All right. And we've got two more such frameworks to be used on quant-based questions and on the comparison-based questions. All right. So instead of thinking blindly, this is really guided thinking and really effective pre-thinking, if you can see. So with those three kind of suggested solutions, we go forward with our answer choice elimination. A says, several of the politicians now recommending that the Pundra be allowed to become weak made that same recommendation before each of the last two periods. And what we're really saying is the politicians making the recommendation now are the same ones as before. Who is making the recommendation is irrelevant, guys. So that's out. After several decades of operating well below peak capacity. So that means in the last 20 plus years or so, uh, Darfur's manufacturing sector was producing well below the peak capacity. Okay, but now Darfur's manufacturing sector is now operating at near peak levels, which means currently Darfur's manufacturing sector doesn't have the scope to increase production. Okay, it had the scope to increase its production in the past. Okay, but now it is already operating at full capacity. Therefore, it cannot really increase its output. So even if Pundra is made weak, exports may not similarly increase by a similar size as in the past. So B is definitely weakening my conclusion and is the correct answer. Again, many of you might have ruled out this choice by thinking that how does this reflect on exports? All right, but it does. Okay. C, the economy of a country experiencing a rise in exports will become healthier only if the country's currency is strong or the rise in exports is significant. Now, this choice talks about what will happen after the country's currency is strong. So clearly, the economy of a country which is already going through an increase in exports. This is talking about that kind of economy, the economy of a country experiencing a rise. But we don't know that about Darfur. We are talking about a country where we want the exports to increase. All right. So again, the health of the economy is not the main point or the concern of the argument. So this is out of scope. D, those countries whose manufactured products compete with Darfur on the world market all currently have stable currencies. Now, this kind of strengthens the politician's recommendation. If all the other countries who are competitors with Darfur, if their currencies are stable, then Darfur's products will be cheaper. Okay, and that strengthens the politician's recommendation that you make Pundra weak and Darfur will be able to increase its exports. So D is definitely not the answer. E says a sharp improvement in the efficiency of Darfur's manufacturing plants would make Darfur's products a bargain on the world market without weakening the Pundra. Now, by saying that I don't need this plan, you're not weakening the plan. Okay, by saying there is an alternate way of improving, you're perhaps saying that there are other plans, but are you weakening the current plan? No, you're saying you don't need the current plan. Not needing the current plan and weakening the current plan are not two different things, and this is a very common trap in GMAT questions. So again, out of scope, guys. I hope you can see how the plan and goal framework, how the causality framework really works wonders. I mean, these were simple constructions to teach you those two frameworks, But then believe me, as you move on to more difficult questions and you have less time on the exam, these guided pre-thinking frameworks really help. With that, let me bring up an end to this webinar. If you want to get in touch with our strategy expert and our co-founder, you can get in touch with Piyush at GMATWhiz.com or at that WhatsApp number. You can also register for free trial. We've given you the links to the free trials. And once again, to iterate, guys, the two pieces of information, we are launching the verbal crash course on the 5th of December, which basically means you need to avail of that at least a week before that, so that you can begin your verbal classes with me. And do remember, we are Black Friday sale, flat 60% off on all online prep courses. Okay, that's $199 for the entire GMAT prep course online. Okay, and individually, if you want the verbal and the quant courses, it's $99 each. Again, at that already discounted price. So I hope, guys, that was a fruitful session for you. Would love to hear some feedback from you. And let me see some questions that have come up. So Manish is saying reading all options is necessary. Yes, Manish, reading all options is absolutely necessary for you to very confidently mark your answer choice. And that confidence is very important. Otherwise, it keeps playing on your mind when you're solving the other questions. That's a very honest admission, and I hope that today's session definitely taught you the importance of eliminating all the choices with proper reasoning. So I hope, guys, that the frameworks really kind of made you think in a totally different direction, and that kind of gave you hope for being able to pre-think on difficult questions as well. So any questions you have related to your verbal preparation, you can ask. And therefore, the next few minutes. Thank you, Manish. Manish found it a good session. So you're most welcome, Manish. We really hope to see you guys, to see all of you again. And I hope you will join us on that verbal crash course to make sure that your scores really get that jump. If you are really planning to go from the late 20s and mid 30s to a V40, this is the right place to do it from. This is the right kind of course that you have come to. Any other questions, guys? Any feedback you have? Anything else that you'd like to know about your preparation? Okay, Arpit is saying he has GMAT exam on 23rd December and I'm facing problem in RC. Well, Arpit, there are two courses open to you. Of course, you can take up the verbal prep course, but if it is just the RC session, you should contact Piyush at the information that I gave you. I think Piyush will share his Calendly link with you, and you can set up an appointment free of cost with Piyush, and he will guide you what to do exactly if it is just RC that is your problem area. Okay, we do offer one-to-one private tutoring as well, so perhaps that could be more along your lines. King Tipu says, "Thanks, ma'am. It was a good session. You're most welcome. It was a wonderful session for me as well. I enjoyed. I kind of lost myself while talking to you guys. So looking forward to seeing you, Arpit, and really hope I can get the chance to help you out. We have this special involved and evolved reading that we offer, which has done wonders. You have when you see Rajiv's debriefing, you will realize that RC was also a very, very important improvement area for him. You're welcome, Arpit. Maninder says, how much time do we need to spend for SC, RC, and CR in the exam? Well, Manidhar, I'll just give you a broad perspective. So, and this is again a very average kind of thing. So ideally, you take about on average 2 minutes. I'm saying average on average. Okay, that means for easier ones you would take slightly less, and for tougher ones you take slightly more. RC and CR questions you eventually land up spending about on average 2 minutes per question. SC around 1 minute 30 seconds or 1 minute 35 to 40 seconds maximum. Okay, you're most welcome, Gautam. So any other questions that you have related to your preparation, guys? I would be glad to answer those. It's been really interesting, guys, seeing you persevering with the questions, and I hope this has really been good for you as well. All right, I think I don't see any more questions. So, guys, once again, uh, do avail of that Black Friday sale. It's actually one of those best offers that can come around at this time of the year. And as I said, the crash course that we've had great success on that crash course. Students have really been able to push their boundaries by those 30 hours of online sessions with me. So wishing you all a very good day and a good night, depending on where you are. Thank you, guys.